frightening and surreal times, we'll keep speaking truth to power, but we will also insist that the power we elect speaks and acts on truth. And to that end, we have parliamentary candidates and people who have stood for parliament and parliamentary party spokespeople to speak to you about their view on this, and most of them will be candidates, likely shortly. So first I introduce to you Corey Drew, who is the prospective parliamentary candidate for Bournemouth East.
Hey!
Thank you. If I fall, you can laugh, I don't mind. I'm on a wobbly step. So I am firstly astounded that we even have to be here today to be discussing this. I can't believe that at this point in our history, when there are so many alternative ways that we can power ourselves, that we would be considering drilling in our beautiful bay for oil. I remember some of my first childhood memories of running around my house, putting labels on things for my parents to reduce and reuse and recycle, and planting things in the garden and turning off all the lights, and wanting to do my bit to save the planet. And ever since I've tried to make decisions in my personal life, as I'm sure all of you do because you've taken the time to be here today, we try to make day-to-day decisions to lower our impact and to reduce climate change. But all of these things that we're doing are getting trampled on by the big businesses who are putting profit before our health and before that of our environment, and by the governments who are allowing them and actually incentivising them to do so. Now, the project that Corallian want to build, the first phase, the oil rig that they want to put out behind us, around 6 kilometres behind us in the sea, as threatening as that is, as Sarah has said, to our environment, as she also mentioned, it really is just the peak of the iceberg. We're looking at a situation where investors and oil prospectors are talking about this as being one of the largest sites. They're expecting this to be an enormous oil reserve, and they are in London now fighting over opportunities to get in on this prize. And the second stage of the drilling, which we don't see plans for yet, because until the rights have been sold, we won't see those plans. I believe that if we wait until the second stage to try and interject, that it will be too late. But I believe that the horizontal drilling that they are intending to carry out, which is the extended reach horizontal drilling, which is currently used in around 20 sites around the world, is not without risk, and it will involve further vertical drilling at multiple sites. The current proposal from Corallian will be that they will drill horizontally from Witch Farm. That's a distance as the crow flies of around 17 kilometres. Currently, the longest record horizontal drill, which is somewhere off of the coast in Russia, is 15 kilometres, and this has been marked by industry magazines and commentators as being an incredible feat. So in order for them to actually carry this out will be quite an ambitious project and involve a lot of disruption to our community, and the risk that comes with this is not a risk that they will carry, it is a risk that we will carry as the local people of the town and as local businesses and people who are concerned for our environment in our beautiful town of Bournemouth. The money that is created, the money that is gained from the oil out there is not going to come back into our own economy, and the risks are ours to face. But rather than focusing on just the risks and leaving you with a very negative message, I really want to counter that with the opportunities, because we shouldn't be looking all the time behind us at the negatives of the old way of doing things. We should be looking forward at the incredible opportunities that green and renewable energy provides us. We could be revitalising our economy, we could be creating business opportunities and long-term jobs at all levels for people in our town and across our county by encouraging people to use renewable energy and by setting the standard and inspiring the rest of the country. We are behind at the moment, but that doesn't need to be the case if there is the political will at a local and national level to incentivise green energy rather than continuing to subsidise oil. There are so many wonderful opportunities. Just this week, the Dyson Award was given, the highest Dyson Award was given to a group of students at a university in, that's not important, I can tell you later, I believe it might have been Lancashire, were given to a group of students who have invented something called the O-Wind, which is a turbine that can be used in an urban environment to generate electricity from the sorts of winds you get in towns and cities that are very gusty and multi-directional. This is something that hasn't been possible before, and with the backing of organisations with a lot of money like Dyson, products like this will start to become available. There are so many exciting initiatives and new ways that we can power our town in an energy efficient, sustainable way so that we don't have to look back and apologise to our children for the mistakes that we've made. But this will only happen if we continue to fight and if we put our votes somewhere to back people who are going to say no to oil and no to natural gas and look forward to the possibilities that we actually could be following and to the amazing opportunities that they provide for our local economy in Bournemouth.
Hi, the next speaker is Phil Dunn, Liberal Democratic Parliamentary Spokesperson for Bournemouth East.
West.
West, I'm
West.
sorry. Bournemouth West. Lib Dem Parliamentary Spokesperson for Bournemouth West.
Sorry. Okay, I'm going to stand on the wobbly step, and as a Liberal Democrat, I'm very used to standing on wobbly steps. I will echo everything Corrie just said. It's one of those areas where Liberal Democrats, Greens, and the Labour Party, I think you will find we are pretty much in agreement across the board. And one thing I will do before talking about this proposal is just give you a reminder. We took a lot of criticism for being a part of a coalition, much of it which came from me. However, one thing we did do in coalition was we created the Green Investment Bank, which, surprise, surprise, the Tories have now sold off. We signed up to environmental energy schemes right across the country, which one by one are being scrapped, the most recent of which being the Swansea Bay Tidal Lagoon. Now, the reason I mention that Tidal Lagoon is because we have a limitless supply of energy here behind us. Never ending, clean. And some of it is blowing on your faces now. We supported the Navitas Bay scheme, and if we were ever in a position to make those sorts of decisions again, we would support it again. Now, I would much rather see the tops of some turbines turning just way out there on the horizon than see one rig here, even if it is only for 6 months. And that's not because of the visual impact of it. I actually quite like industrial landscapes. I don't mind looking at an oil rig or anything like that. If you've been to northeastern Scotland and looked off of the coast, seen the oil rigs there, they can be quite mesmerising. They can actually be quite beautiful things to look at until you remember what they're doing. Now, I'm in firm agreement with some of the signs here that say leave the oil in the ground. We do not need it. We need to wean ourselves off this addiction to hydrocarbons. Because every time, every drop of oil we pull out of the ground is adding another strand to the noose that we're putting around the planet's neck. We need to be finding new ways and innovative ways of generating energy for all of us. Whether that's wind, whether it's tidal, whether it's wave power, whether it's solar, whether it's geothermal, there are any number of different sustainable ways of meeting our energy needs. And the other thing we've got to be doing is reducing the energy we use. It's not just about meeting the demand, it's about cutting the demand. We've got to rethink the way we live our lives. We can no longer be addicted to this hydrocarbon fueled supply of energy. So, if, as I say, we're ever in a position to make those decisions again, we will be opposing that. If I find myself on the Borough Council next year, I will be opposing that. If and I would imagine any of these Labour candidates here or any of these Green people here found themselves in a position of authority, they, like me, will be opposing this proposal. Keep up the fight.
Proposing this is it quadrilla? No.
Thank you for that. We're now returning to speakers, and our next illustrious speaker is David Stokes, who was the 2017 Labour parliamentary candidate for Bournemouth West. David.
Right, good afternoon ladies and gentlemen, it's really good to see you here. First of all, I want to say a big thank you to the people who have organised this demonstration, so let's have a round of applause for them.
Yay!
I can only echo what Corrie has said, that it is absolutely disgusting that we're here actually talking about this and having to protest about this. Now, I was born in Boscombe Hospital many years ago, and that's about a mile from the beach, and many of my earliest days I can remember going down to the seafront with my brothers and sisters. I think it is terrible that we are planning to destroy, possibly for a long time, destroy the ecosystem in the bay. Now, that ecosystem, what is terrible about this drilling, and people have said, oh, this is only the first phase and it's only going to be there for 6 months. The proposals I have looked at suggest that they are intending to keep in the drilling mud and the rock chippings at the bottom of the bay, so they're not planning to take them away. Now, that might not sound horrible, but basically it's out of sight, out of mind. The trouble is that will be pollutants on the bay bottom, and that is going to affect the ecosystem, and that will affect our industries, not only the tourist industry but all the fishing industry, and that means it will affect jobs, and that is something we cannot allow. So I'm here to say I'm solidly behind you. I stood for Parliament 5 times, and always when we stood, we've had the environment at the forefront of our campaign. In the recent past, in the last few months, we're really pleased to have said that we've had the Labour shadow spokesman on environmental and energy and climate change have been down here, the shadow Secretary of State and the shadow Minister. We see environmental problems, environmental campaigning as the mainstay of our campaign, and I am here solidly behind you. We want to make sure that this does not affect our generation, but it also does not affect our children's generation and their children's generation. It is something that we must protest. So this is only the start. This is going to be something ongoing, and we must keep it up. So thank you for coming today. Thank you for organising this, but let's not end it here. Let's carry this out into the streets, into our schools, into our workplaces. Let's make sure that we continue this fight, because we do not want this test drilling, and we do not want the second phase, as has been said. Thank you.
Mark Chivers, Climate Reality Leader.
Thank you very much. It's on, is it okay? Good afternoon, everyone, and I'd just like to echo the thanks as well to Sarah and others who've organised this today. And what hasn't been mentioned so far is actually this is a global day of action, and there are some 800 plus events in 94 countries taking place today to keep fossil fuels in the ground. So it's good to see that not only are we here protesting against what's happening behind me, but also in support with other people across the planet out for the same reason. One of the problems of sort of talking after others is you're in danger of repeating what's already been said. And as a climate reality leader, I'm one of about 6,000 trained volunteers who go out to local communities to talk about the details of the climate crisis and its solutions, and I'm happy to come out to any of the organisations that you represent here today to give people more of the information. I think for most of us here it might be preaching to the converted, but it gives them extra information and tools they can take to take those arguments out. So that's what I'm going to do today, really, hopefully, is provide a few more of those things. Now, we know the climate crisis is a real and present danger. Now, while we may have enjoyed a few extra sunny days on this beach this summer. We know for people in Greece in the wildfires, for people in Japan in the storms, and for other places, even farmers in this country, the effects of global warming can be catastrophic. We know that it's not a belief. Climate change is based on science of 800,000 years of evidence taken from ice cores, centuries of observed information, and decades run from climate models. And what these models show, and lots of people say, oh, well, they haven't been 100% right when you look at the results that come out. Well, they never can be, because they're not crystal balls, they can't tell the future. But what the scientists will tell you is if you look at the models and run them and back test them to see how we got to where we are today, all of the other variables, whether it's the way the Earth moves around its axes or changes its distance from the sun, none of them give you the same results of the increase in temperatures that we've got now, other than the introduction of man-made greenhouse gas emissions. So this is a very clear science. But it's not just about the environment, it's also about the economy, because we know the fact that we know that the temperature rises as the concentration of greenhouse gases emissions increase. We can work out how much more we can afford to emit before we go over dangerous threshold levels. Now, depending on the estimates you look at, that's somewhere between about 900 and 1500 gigatons of carbon. Now, that may sound a lot, and it is a huge number, until you work out that we're actually already emitting that to the extent that that figure will have been gone through in the next few decades. So it's a big number, but we're on that trajectory to use all of that up. Then we're into dangerous territory. Now, what a number of scientists and financial analysts have done at places like Carbon Tracker and Cambridge University is they said, given we know this number, how much we can afford to emit, how much actual fossil fuel reserves are there? And they've looked at the reports and accounts of all the major fossil fuel companies. And the shocking news is that there's already 3 to 5 times more known reserves than we can afford to burn. So we do not need any more testing. And in fact, what they estimate is that there's a carbon bubble equivalent to around $6 trillion of fossil fuels that we can never use. It's like having a warehouse full of goods that you will not be able to sell. And they also estimate that 40% of existing projects are already at risk because they will get to the stage where they're just not needed. So it begs the question really, why, when there are already $6 trillion worth of fossil fuels that we probably can't use, and 40% of the existing projects are already at risk because we won't need them, we definitely do not need anything behind us here in this bay. So let's be clear, is that if this happens behind us and there is an accident, as other speakers have already mentioned, whether it's an accident or even in some of the construction has already been mentioned, this actually poses an environmental and economic risk to Bournemouth. But if it goes ahead and is successful in their terms, then it actually poses an economic and an environmental risk to the whole of the planet. So whichever way you measure this development, there is absolutely no need for it. So it's sort of sometimes in this true blue county, so even though I'm not here on a political perspective today, I will drift into it slightly. We often sort of think that there's not really a radical base here for standing up to things, but actually about 40 miles down the coast, just under 200 years ago, 6 brave men told truth to power at that stage and stood up to the landowners and the gentry at that time and formed a movement, or helped form a movement, that has improved the working conditions and the livelihoods of countless millions of people over the years. So I think it's that radical tradition here that we need to build on. And in fact, I'd like to end really today by using a few of the words from one of those martyrs, George Lovelace, who, in speaking, I'd like to adapt what he said back then to something that's relevant for us today. So in his words, with a few more added, we raise the watchword liberty. From fossil fuel, we will be free. Thank you very much.
have Simon Bull, Green Party Councillor for Bournemouth, Winton East, and prospective parliamentary candidate for Bournemouth West.
It's fantastic to see everybody here. I know it may not seem a large number, but it is good, and building numbers. And what I want to talk to you about numbers is not many people seem to know what's likely to go on out there. So I think it's important we get the message out, let our neighbours know, let our friends know that this might be happening and we need to stop it. We need to write to Conor Burns and say it's not right, we don't want it, it's threatening the planet, and more locally, it's threatening our beaches, threatening the seahorses. We have to stand against these things. We've heard from Mark Chivers, we've heard from Phil, and I disagree with Phil. We can all do more. We can all continue to write to our MPs, write to the council. We can take further steps. We don't have to wait till we're in the council. I'll do my bit as a member of the council, but I can't do a lot on my own. We all need to get behind this and fight this oil rig. 60 days or whatever, we don't need it, and we don't need it beyond there. We don't need horizontal drilling to go on at any cost, really. It's not. We don't need to be using fossil fuels. We can use. Renewable energy is there. The sun is there. The wind is there. We don't need to continue with this dirty fuel. I'll leave it there. Thank you very much.
Next we have Stuart Lane, as he calls himself just a resident, but long-term and hard-working stalwart campaigner.
That's the wrong button. Do I need to press anything?
No, here it is.
Don't press anything. That's fine.
Yeah, no buttons.
Okay, I won't press that button again. I'd just like to add a couple of things. This proposed project, one of the aspects that's most offensive about it, even if you accept that this site will be drilled, and that I think is that's an open question. The way that they're proposing to go about it is so much riskier than the established drilling that's going on at Witch Farm. The basis of that, the crux of the issue is, if there's a leak, if there's a severe accident on shore, on land, you can cap a well in about 2 or 3 days. It's not great, but it's a level of pollution that's measurable and can be dealt with reasonably easily. If a well blows out at sea, the well can't be capped. It has to be drilled from about 2 kilometres away. It takes several months to intercept the well and to try to block the flow. During that 2 or 3 months, the well is spewing oil in an uncontrolled fashion into the sea. Now that is the crux of the issue with this offshore drilling. If there's a serious accident, that well will spew oil into the bay for months. There have been accidents analogous to this, and the devastation has been total. So that's what's at stake here. And I'd just like to add another point. I think we have to draw Perenco into this story. Perenco operates the Witch Farm. They have the Long Reach drilling facility. Corallian is a pop-up company. They're taking advantage. They're using investors' funds. They have no capital of their own. They're cowboys. Their only opportunity to exploit this well is because Perenco could later follow up with a drilling Perenco is allowing Corallian to do something that they would not be prepared to do themselves. So I think we have to take this to Perenco. And I think I would invite you to watch this space over the next few weeks. There will be information released about Perenco. It has locally a good reputation, and it's held out as an industry within the industry as being a fantastic example of what can be done. And I think you'll find, mark my words, over the next few weeks we will reveal what Perenco has been doing locally, and it's quite disgraceful. I can't say any more about it at the moment, but think in terms of Perenco and their involvement in this project as well. Thank you very much.
Our last speaker today is the illustrious professor from Bournemouth University, professor of biology and conservation. Also, before folks leave, if you would like to be kept up to date on what else you can do to fight this, please sign up on our sign-up sheets. And we also have protest postcards that go to MPs, so 2 things you can do today. So with no further ado, Professor Rick Stafford.
Okay, I didn't actually know I was speaking, so this is entirely unprepared. But yesterday I was diving out in Poole Bay, and we're doing some surveys on the reefs there. It's obviously a very difficult job that I have, and wouldn't recommend it for anyone. But there are thousands of fish out there at the moment. It's teeming with life. There's all sorts of different things, including tiny little sea bream, which will hopefully end up as big sea bream and may even make it onto your plate in a few years. Now, that is under threat. It's under threat for 2 possible reasons. Obviously, an oil spill in the bay is going to be devastating to anything that lives there. There's a low risk of that, but there is a risk, and if it happens, it's very, very serious. There's another risk though, and that risk is of climate change. All marine ecosystems are under threat from climate change, including the ones out in the bay. For coral reefs, we've got to keep our temperature within 2 degrees. Okay? That's 2 degrees of pre-industrial levels, so we're already part way there. We cannot carry on burning fossil fuels in the way that we're doing now. We need to reduce that demand. We need to be moving to cleaner and renewable energy sources, and we need to be doing it now. So one of the big problems with this drilling is it's sending out exactly the wrong message. It's sending out the message, because it may be a reasonably small operation, it's not going to by itself contribute enormously to climate change, but we need to be stopping this around the world right now, moving to renewable sources. So this just sends out the entire wrong message. And really, I think that's all I've got to say, apart from I agree with everybody else. Thank you.
I want to share regrets from our MP from Bournemouth West, Connor Burns, who was very disappointed he couldn't make it, but also for him to express he is against this oil drilling. He is against any kind of a rig in the sea, and I have a copy, if anybody would like it, of his letter to the Secretary of State, and he continues to campaign against this within the government.
Just not here.
That's a surprise. Well, as everyone here knows, because that's why you're here, we're here to put our foot down and stop any oil drilling in Bournemouth, outside of the beach, in the sea. This is it's just absurd. The proposed rig is a test rig, but this would be the head of a very ugly and long-lived monster. Once they prove that the oil is down there, which they actually already know, and this is really just a publicity exercise that they can sell on the rights, the oil drilling would happen horizontally, and these are risky methods, and it's also absolutely foolish to risk any risk of a spill. Of course, it would decimate not just our area, but all the way possibly up to Norway, Germany, and France for decades. It would ruin our economy and our conservation. And of course, it's absolutely absurd to continue going after fossil fuels. It's like cutting up your own boat to heat your house, or even heat yourself in the boat. It just makes no sense. We have to face the facts of climate change. We're facing catastrophic changes and changes to society as we know it. Now, if anybody ever hears the UK government stamping their feet and saying we can't subsidize green energy anymore because we need it to stand on its own 2 feet. Well, what about the billions that our government uses to subsidize fossil fuels? What about the UK tax money that goes to other countries to support their fossil fuel industry, such as supporting Paribus in Brazil? These are really false profits. It's absurd. In these frightening and surreal times, we'll keep speaking truth to power, but we will also insist that the power we elect speaks and acts on truth. And to that end, we have parliamentary candidates and people who have stood for parliament and parliamentary party spokespeople to speak to you about their view on this, and most of them will be candidates, likely